Coming up next, it was a year of big moments. Ronald Reagan challenged Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down that wall. On Black Monday, the stock market crashed, and scientists spotted a supernova exploding in the depths of space. Back here on Earth, music is having a supernova of its own. Some of the biggest albums ever to hit the charts made today's year a candidate for the greatest year in music history. See if you can guess it. This year was led by songs so unforgettable they still resonate today, including a rock anthem that has such a fist-pumping sing-along moment in it. We all stop everything we're doing to sing along to it whenever it comes on, I swear. Another that's so haunting it still sends shivers down our spine, with an eerie guitar. And then one that came from a legend that got dissed at a dinner party in the 70s, so he remembered it and put it in the song as an inside joke in the 80s, and it became a smash. And another that had an awesomely deranged music video with puppets that cost 10 grand each. See if you can guess it. Top 10 countdown is coming up next. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time, especially today. If you remember messing with your antenna on your boombox to get rid of the fuzz so that the radio station would come in, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the white button and click the bell so you know when our interviews and our videos come out. Also, check out professorofrock.com. We have some additional content there, really special stuff. You're really going to enjoy it. Got a live stream coming up next week. So did you guess the year today's Top 10 countdown? It's a year that definitely deserves consideration as one of the best years in music history, if not the best, especially for the iconic albums that were released in this year. I mean, just incredible, breathtaking. And Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, Def Leppard, Hysteria, U2, The Joshua Tree, In Excess, Kick, Pink Floyd, A Momentary Lapse of Reason, Aerosmith, Permanent Vacation, their big comeback, Michael Jackson, Bad, R.E.M. Document, The Smiths, Strange Ways, Here We Come, Whitney Houston's Whitney album. Come on, everybody loves it. George Michael, Faith, probably my favorite pop album ever. The Cure, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, and so many more. Picking a list of the best songs from that year, 87, that's the year, especially challenging, giving that kind of formidable competition. But we didn't wimp out here. I didn't wimp out. I took on the challenge and put together countdown of the top 10 songs of 1987. Launching with the first successive single from a major album, Animal by Def Leppard is at number 10. It just hit me. There are 3 years on our countdown so far that have included a track from Hysteria, 1989, 1988, and 1987. That's how big this album was. And that's not even including their 2 biggest hits from the album, Pour Some Sugar on Me and Love Bites. Animal didn't happen overnight. It took years of tweaking and reworking before it became the hit fans know today. The band called it the most difficult track to record for their blockbuster album Hysteria, and that's saying a lot considering that the entire Hysteria record was the ultimate challenge of patience and perseverance for any rock band. Making that album was a cluster, I can't say it on here, but as they say. It took over 3 years to even get started with the recording process. Animal started with Def Leppard guitarist Phil Collen, who wrote the original version and laid down a rough demo. But something about it wasn't quite right. Now, it was the only Hysteria track demoed by Rick Allen on an acoustic drum kit prior to his near-fatal car accident. The drummer having recorded a beat for the song on a 4-track tape during the early sessions before they started recording. As Phil recalled, the song had gone through multiple revisions, but the breakthrough came unexpectedly. He said, we'd revisit it over and over. I remember we were in Paris recording vocal for something else when Joe laid down this incredible vocal take. Producer Mutt Lange heard it and said, wow, that vocal was killer. Let's rewrite the song around the vocal. That was the pivotal moment. The band restructured Animal from the ground up, molding it into the polished anthemic track that would become their first top 10 hit in England. And it was a much-needed hit here in the States. Yeah, you remember the album Hysteria was so costly, the band would have to sell 5 million units just to break even. And it looked really bleak when Lep's first single, Women, flopped. I mean, it flopped big time. And of all the classics on the album, the band's management company and Polygram Records decided to put out Women first, which is crazy to me. I mean, Women's good, but it's not as good as these other ones. Women was picked to be a setup track, an image track, before the tracks that they felt would be big crossover hits were released. But the strategy looked really bad when Women stiffed completely and the sales momentum for Hysteria stopped, really. Unfortunately, Animal, as the second single, became a hit in America and the album gradually built back momentum. What started off as a bit of a disappointment eventually became the 5th biggest selling album of 1987, moving more than 10 million units in the US and more than 25 million globally. Of course, Pour Some Sugar on Me and Hysteria, the title track, had a lot to do with that. Animal peaked at number 8 in New Zealand, number 3 in Ireland, and number 19 here on the Billboard Hot 100 is the first hit from Hysteria. Onward we go on the countdown here with the first major hit by a band that started out as Joy Division before changing their name when their lead singer took his own life, and then they restructured their sound. I got True Faith by New Order at number 9. True Faith was written by Bernard Sumner, Peter Hook, Stephen Morris, and Gillian Gilbert, the core members of New Order, along with Stephen Hague, who co-produced the track. By the mid-'80s, New Order was at the top of their game. They had carved out a unique space in music, blending post-punk with electronic beats and dance floor energy. One of my favorite bands, but while the band was thriving creatively, their label Factory Records was struggling to stay afloat, and they needed a hit, something big enough to just keep the lights on. That moment arrived in the form of True Faith. What started out as a jam session soon took shape into something really special. The song was sleek, it was hypnotic, and undeniably infectious. It's just what Factory Records needed from New Order at that point. But True Faith wasn't just a lifeline for the label. It became one of New Order's defining songs, proving that even in the face of uncertainty, they could still deliver magic. Now, despite True Faith becoming a major success, it wasn't exactly a high point for New Order's bassist and co-founder Peter Hook. For him, the song represented a shift, and one that he wasn't entirely comfortable with. He would say, let's just say it was a bit of a battle for me to get on there at all. The band, as they leaned further into pure dance music, Peter Hook found himself fighting to hold on to the sound that he loved from before. He managed to get his signature bass on the original track, but it didn't take long for remixers to strip it out, replacing it with their own. Now, frustrated about being snubbed, who wouldn't be, Peter joked about leaving a note attached to his recording saying, "How about keeping the bass?" But the musical tide, it was shifting, and True Faith marked a moment where New Order's evolution wasn't just exciting, it was also bittersweet. So True Faith, it was a song that broke New Order into the US Top 40. It went to number 32 on the Billboard Hot 100. Now, over in the UK, it did even better. It climbed all the way to number 4, one of their biggest hits ever there. Beyond the charts, this song became something even larger. Over the years, it's remained a fan favorite, a defining anthem of late 80s synth pop, and a track that still sounds just as fresh today as it did back then. It was way ahead of its time, for sure. Rolling in at number 8 on the top 10 songs on 1987 countdown, it's the Rock and Roll Western by Way of New Jersey. Got Wanted Dead or Alive by Bon Jovi from another monster album of the 80s, Slippery When Wet. I chose this over Living on a Prayer just because Living on a Prayer has been played so many times, but man, ever since their debut in 84, Bon Jovi were on the road almost nonstop, playing around 3,000 shows a year, then squeezing in time to record whenever they could. They were quite possibly the hardest working band in show business. I mean, yeah, it was exhausting. It was also exhilarating and everything they'd ever dreamed of. So when John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora sat down to write songs for their third album, Slippery When Wet, they drew from what they knew best, the endless cycle of, performing in front of thousands of people night after night, at least then.
Only the names will change.
Like I said, the crowds were massive and the energy was electric. But then after a while, the faces blurred together, the towns became a blur, and the road felt like a world all its own. From that whirlwind came a song, a rock anthem that captured those highs and the grind and the undeniable thrill of life on the stage. And I don't care who you are, whether you're a Bon Jovi fan or whether you hate this band, when John Bon Jovi sings this part, we all raise our fists and sing along with the same energy as watching an 80s action movie, I swear.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
So here's what producing legend Bob Rock, who engineered the song, said about it.
Bruce Fairbairn used to go home. Well, he went home for dinner. So we did a pass, and dinner happened. And it was okay. So we kind of knew what we were doing. So I took the band to a Greek restaurant, and we drank. Okay? And we came back, and we basically pressed play or record. And the take after dinner with a bit of, what is it? Ouzo, the Greek wine or whatever. And a great, one take. And that was it. That's how good they were.
Yeah. I understand John Bon Jovi had a bit of a cold when he recorded this one, but you can't tell. I mean, this was incredible. This thing rocked audiences all over. It climbed to number 13 in Australia and the UK. It went to number 6 in Ireland, number 5 in New Zealand, and number 7 here on the Billboard Hot 100. Speaking of number 7, our top 10 countdown here, I've got a song that many forget about, but it's the most haunting song of the year and really a candidate for the most haunting of the entire 80s. Talking about Sweet 16 by Billy Idol with the amazing Steve Stevens on lead guitar.
When I do anything for my sweet 16.
I swear that guitar, it sends shivers down my spine even every time I hear it. It's just compelling. Sweet 16 was born from a real-life tale of heartbreak and obsession. The song was inspired by Edward Leedskalnin, a Latvian immigrant who, fueled by lost love, single-handedly constructed the mysterious Coral Castle in Florida. Back in Latvia, Leedskalnin was engaged to Agnes Skuvs. She was the love of his life, but just before their wedding, she called it off, leaving him devastated. Actually, here's what the man himself said about Sweet 16.
Ed, he would take people around this memorial, this Coral Castle, as it was called. For 25 cents, he'd give them guided tours, and about, halfway around, someone would say, hey, Ed, what the fuck did you build this place for? And he'd say, it's for my Sweet 16,
Ah.
He was going to marry her. He was left at the altar, so he lionized this thing that happened and spent the rest of his life kind of memorializing it. And I just thought, wow, it's a bit like I'd lost my Sweet 16 too, So I was really, really heartbroken and hurt that, I'd broken up with the girl I'd been with for like 5 or 6 years by that point. And here I am in song kind of memorializing my love for Perry,
Yeah. Sweet 16 was the third single dropped from Billy's Whiplash album. The song was a mega hit in West Germany, rising to number 2. It's number 3 in New Zealand and number 5 in Austria. It went to number 17 in the UK and number 20 here in the Billboard Hot 100. All right, let's bust out the track at number 6 on the top 10 songs of 87 countdown with a classic song that is exactly as the one-word chorus says it is. Fire. It's The One I Love by R.E.M.
This one goes out to the one I love.
The story of The One I Love started on Peter Buck's porch, where he came up with a riff that would become the backbone of one of R.E.M's most iconic tracks. Mike Mills recalled in an interview with Uncut that Peter showed him the riff, and instantly he thought it was something really great. Mike Mills said, "I remember thinking it was really pretty cool. And from there, the rest of the song just flowed." Now, for a while, the band played the entire song as an instrumental. A lot of people don't realize that. That is until Michael Stipe, inspired by the music, finally crafted the perfect vocals to bring this track to life. In the chorus of The One I Love, like I said, Michael Stipe stretches out a single word, fire, and it becomes a haunting wail. Meanwhile, in the background, bassist Mike Mills softly sings "She's Coming Down on Her Own Now." A lot of people don't know what that one was saying. Now, people mistake this for a love song. It's actually the complete opposite. Michael Stipe has said it's about repeatedly using people. It's sneaky, though. First, it totally sounds like a love song. Till you hit that brutal line, "a simple prop to occupy my time." That one line changes everything. Occupy my time. It's a clever deception, luring listeners in with the illusion of romance before revealing its true, much darker meaning. Now, from a crossover perspective, this was R.E.M's first big hit. It reached number 17 in South Africa, number 11 in Canada, and went to number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100, their first top 10. So it was far from a church hymn, but it sure started out that way. At number 5 on the countdown of the top 10 songs of 1987, I've got the catchy sing-along classic, "Faith" by George Michael. You know, when the Faith LP dropped, George Michael explained why he picked the song as the title track. He said, and I quote, "It just represents how I'm feeling right now. It's kind of another way of saying hope and optimism. Faith, to me, is such a powerful word, and the more I thought about the song being the single, the more I loved the idea of making it the title track of the album." Now, like I said, Faith kicks off with a pretty religious-sounding intro. Starts with what seems like a church organ playing a tune that actually comes from Wham's 1984 hit "Freedom." And not the Freedom 90 that was more well-known, but, Freedom from Wham. It's a bit of a nod to the era that George was trying to move away from, actually. But here's a twist. The organ sound wasn't actually a real church organ at all. It was a Yamaha DX7 synthesizer set to the pipe organ preset, and it was Chris Cameron who played it. And we all know that Faith was not an evangelical tune at all. It was actually quite sexual if you listen to the lyrics, like the entire album. If you grew up in the 80s with MTV blasting on your screen, like I did, 87 is actually when our house got it for good. You remember the image of George Michael strumming his guitar in the video for Faith. It must be etched in your mind. Here's the thing, though. Michael didn't actually know how to play the guitar. He was just faking it. Something any guitar player could spot a mile away. But George didn't care. He had a theory that for the American audience, if you stick a guitar in the video, they're going to love it. And he proves that theory correct. This was a huge video. Something else that was very memorable from the music video of Faith was George wearing a pair of Ray-Ban 50 sunglasses. The shades became a key part of George Michael's look for the Faith album. But after it was released, he wore them almost nonstop for almost a year. This is while he was on tour. And the reason was so that he could avoid making eye contact with strangers. He just couldn't handle those kind of interactions at that point. 'Cause I gotta have faith. And of course, there was the butt shaking that literally made him the butt of jokes after Dana Carvey's impersonation on SNL.
Look at it! Accept it! Look at it, Dennis! Look at my butt!
George, of course, referenced it in the future in Freedom 90.
Everybody's got to sell, but when you shake your ass, they know that's fast.
Faith was massive. It's actually one of my favorite pop albums ever. It's one that my whole family would play on road trips. All of us would sing it in unison. Won the Grammy for Album of the Year. It hit #1 in so many countries in Europe, along with Australia, Canada, and on the Billboard Hot 100 here in America. Actually, it hit for 4 weeks. It was the biggest hit of 1987. And it went to number 2 in the UK. That's crazy. Next up on our countdown of the top 10 songs of 87, it was a total sleeper. Didn't have the star power that many other songs had that year, but it happens to be one of the coolest of the entire decade. In number 4, I got Mary's Prayer by the mysterious Danny Wilson. In the group that performed Mary's Prayer, no one was actually named Danny Wilson, but it was the name of the band that formed in Dundee, Scotland. It was actually the name of a Frank Sinatra movie. The lead singer, writer, and producer Gary Clark, who composed Mary's Prayer, the band's lone hit, told me about this song, and it's a fascinating story.
So if I say,
I played these chords on the white note, which is the verse of Mary's Prayer.
I used to be so careless, as if I couldn't.
I loved the sound, and I just immediately started singing. The verse melody came into my head, almost the full verse fully formed and lyrically.
Suddenly the heavens roll, suddenly the rain.
And I kept trying to write a chorus for it, and nothing felt good enough. Like, nothing felt as good as the verse. I just kept going on it and then rejecting choruses. I must have rejected 20 ideas easily. And it probably about a year later, I still had this verse. And I was watching Top of the Pops, which was the big chart show on TV here. Karma Chameleon by Culture Club. But it had this really bright, major key, kind of almost country and western kind of a feel to it somehow. I don't know. And it made me pick the guitar up and go back to Mary's Prayer, this time not on the keyboard, but on the guitar. Started singing it. And then when I hit the major chord going into the chorus, hallelujah, you know, that's the key to it.
Mary's Prayer from the album Meet Danny Wilson was a worldwide hit for Gary Clark, Kit Clark, and Ged Grimes, the trio that made up the band. Single went to number 4 in Israel, number 5 in Ireland, number 9 in South Africa, and number 3 in the UK. Peaked at number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 6 on the AC chart. It should have been a number 1 hit, let's be honest. We're winding our way down the top 10 songs of 87, and all the way to number 3 on the countdown, I've got Ryman Paul Simon with his very clever ditty, You Can Call Me Al from Graceland, one of the great albums of the 80s.
I can call you Betty, Betty, when you call me, you can call me out.
You know, You Can Call Me Al begins with a wry observation, almost like an inside joke. Why am I soft in the middle when the rest of my life is so hard?
Soft in the middle now. Why am I soft in the middle? The rest of my life is so hard.
It's simple, relatable, an everyday thought wrapped in an easy melody, which Paul is so great at. But then the chorus takes a sharp left turn into the unexpected. You can call me Betty, and Betty, you can call me Al.
Betty, when you call me, you can call me out.
Wait, what? Who's Betty? Who is Al? And why are these characters coming into the story now? There's no immediate answer, and that's sort of the beauty of it. The lyrics are playful, almost nonsensical, yet they don't feel out of place. Even Paul himself admitted he wasn't entirely sure what he was saying at the time when he wrote it, but somehow that confusion isn't frustrating. It's just part of the charm of one Paul Simon. It's as if he's inviting the listener into the mystery with a shrug and a smile. I don't know what I'm talking about, but neither do you.
If you'll be my bodyguard, I can be your long lost pal.
And somehow that makes it all the more fun to sing along to. Paul Simon, one of the greatest writers ever. Turns out that Paul wrote the lines, You Can Call Me Al and I Can Call You Betty, from a real-life get-together. It was from 1970, when Paul Simon and his wife at the time, Peggy Harper, were hosting a party at their home. A lively gathering filled with musicians, artists, and other friends. Among the guests was Stanley Silverman, a composer and close friend of Paul's, who had recently been named the director of the New York Philharmonic. He arrived with another composer, the esteemed Pierre Boulez. And as the evening wound down, Boulez, in his French accent, bid farewell to the couple, but instead of saying goodnight, Paul, goodnight, Peggy, he charmingly called out, "Good night, Al. Good night, Betty." Paul and Peggy, they both exchanged a confused glance at each other. Al? Betty? Who the hell are these guys? Boulez hadn't meant any offense, of course. It was simply his interpretation of their names, I guess. Paul became Al. Peggy became Betty. It was an amusing mix-up, but I gotta wonder, how would anyone confuse a legend like Paul Simon for Al, whoever Al is? Years later, Paul would remember the harmless diss for a classic song, and it was a smash. And of course, there's some very cool African musical elements in the recording of You Can Call Me Al. There's the African percussion and the use of the penny whistle. Of course, it's not right to talk about this song, to have a conversation about You Can Call Me Al without talking about the hilarious music video featuring a lip-syncing, star-making performance by somebody who's already a star, Chevy Chase. Just the size difference between him, 6'4", and Paul at 5'3", was great comedy. But the way they played off each other in that clip with just one camera was so classic. Paul Simon had a big old fat hit with You Can Call Me Al, perhaps most notably in South Africa, where the roots were planted for his acclaimed Graceland album. The single went all the way to number 2 there. It hit the same mark in Australia and Belgium and Ireland and Holland. In the UK, You Can Call Me Al made it to number 4. While it hit a modest number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100, back-to-back songs at number 23, it was the last hit single for Paul Simon in America, actually. At the runner-up spot, bridesmaid position, best songs of 1987, I've got a heart-wrenching classic from a band that had their big breakthrough in America, From the Joshua Tree, and it's actually a song that U2 threw in the trash, With or Without You. Just like R.E.M. did with The One I Love, With or Without You was a song that finally made U2 a massive group in America. For the Joshua Tree, they had a loyal following, don't get me wrong, but their success in the U.S. had been pretty modest. Back home in Ireland, they were already huge stars, worldwide as well. But they started making inroads here in '84 with Pride in the Name of Love. Now, what can you say about With or Without You that hasn't already been said? Here's the thing about With or Without You. It might be the most tortured song of the 80s. It's a song that, in some ways, is physically painful to listen to. It's so agonizing, but you can't not listen to it. It pulls you in every single time. And you give yourself away. It was written at a difficult time in Bono's career. He was being pulled in two opposite directions at once, between his music and the woman he loved, Allie, who he's still married to. He put it down, and his vocals fire, and, at the end, he just goes insane, losing his shit, But as I said, the song was almost thrown away. After repeated attempts to arrange it, they kept coming up empty. Bono said in an interview recently with Q, they were just sick of it, and they threw it in the trash. Then it was Bono's childhood friend Gavin Friday, who was visiting him in the studio, who fished it out of the trash and made him finish it. They rearranged it. They built it from scratch. And Larry Mullen Jr. found the right place for his drums to explode. And then Gavin heard the Edge playing his new guitar, the Infinite guitar, which became the song's secret weapon. This wasn't some off-the-shelf effect pedal. It was an invention, something experimental, almost otherworldly. Michael Brook, a Canadian musician and sound designer, had come up with the idea while he was working with the Edge on the 1986 film The Captive. Instead of a traditional pickup, Brook's design used a magnetic device that kept the strings vibrating endlessly. This allowed notes to sustain without needing to be plucked again.
See the thorn twist in your side.
That, and of course Bono's incredible inspired vocal, made this song a revelation. More than 10 million copies of The Joshua Tree were sold in the US alone, with sales surpassing 25 million worldwide for basically an indie band. Meanwhile, With or Without You was equally as massive. It shot to #1 in 10 countries, including Canada, Ireland, and here at the top of the summit on the Billboard Hot 100. It was #1 for 3 weeks. All right, here we are again. We're at the pinnacle of our countdown for a great year in music, maybe the greatest year ever. Let me know what you think below. The track I chose as the #1 song of 1987 is truly a heartwarming treasure, one of the greatest songs ever. By Neil Finn and Crowded House, I've got Don't Dream It's Over.
Don't dream it's over, hey now.
I feel like Neil Finn doesn't get nearly enough credit as a lyricist. I've said it before. He's rarely brought up in those conversations about the greats, but he absolutely should be. He truly has a gift.
Without, try to catch the deluge in a paper cup.
Not just for writing deep, evocative lyrics, but for pairing them with melodies that just stick with you for the long haul. He's a master at crafting songs that feel both intimate and timeless. And honestly, it's about time he got more recognition for it.
When the world comes in,
Fun to be able to tell him how much his music has meant to me and to hear him tell the story of his opus, Don't Dream It's Over. One of my favorite interviews. Here's what he said. Try to catch the deluge in a paper cup. I remember I looked up the word deluge because I was like, what is that?
That was a little homage to John Lennon, really. I mean, I was aware at the time, when I wrote about anybody who mentions paper cup in a song, you've got to take that one on board. He was there first.
are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. Try to catch the deluge in a paper cup.
Well, the chorus, Don't Dream It's Over, what were you talking about there?
We always considered there was a double meaning there, which, it's either don't dream, it's over, or don't dream, it's over. It's a subtle difference, but there is a possibility of two meanings in there.
Now, the song finished at #2 for the year. Maybe the greatest #2 in the history of music.
They come to build a wall between us.
But one poll where it did finish #1, a musician's poll asking the question, what's the one song you wish you'd written? Dozens of legends skipped over obvious picks like Yesterday by the Beatles or Stairway to Heaven by Zeppelin, and they chose Don't Dream It's Over. Now, fittingly, it was a #1 single in Neil's homeland of New Zealand, and it also crowned the singles chart in Canada. So that completes our countdown of the top 10 songs of 1987, but I gotta wrap up with a few honorable mentions, led by Land of Confusion by Genesis. Now, the members of Genesis had so many hits in and out of this band around this time, between lead singer Phil Collins and bassist Mike Rutherford. They had over a dozen top 10 hits over just a couple of years. You know what? Land of Confusion, it might be their best. It was so prophetic. Many now wonder if these guys were time travelers because this classic song describes our day to a T. And most don't realize it's actually a protest song. This one has such an awesomely deranged music video, one of the greatest ever, a year of great music videos. I mean, it was every bit as incredible as the song. Led by some really crazy Muppets, puppets that cost $10,000 each. Here's some more honorable mentions.
So strong. Listen to the melody rain. How do I get to alone?
Fun to go back and review all the great songs from a specific year, but man, 1987 was a blast. So many great songs. And it was hard to leave out I Want to Dance with Somebody. One of the greatest pop singles of all time. Is also tough to leave out other ones, but that's what I got. What are your thoughts? What do you think? What are your memories of these songs? What's your top 10 of 87? What are the greatest albums of 1987? Let's have a great discussion below, and make sure to subscribe below to be part of our community for good. Celebrate the greatest of music. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.